So good morning, how is everyone today? I'm Brent Stackhouse, I'm with Mount Sinai Ventures. It's an absolute honor to be here at Life Science Nation. This is second or third time I had an opportunity to come to one of the Resi conferences somewhere in the country. Real quick, everyone can hear me all right? Life Science Nation has been a terrific partner in trying to figure out exactly where our health systems are going in terms of investment strategy. It's been an ongoing conversation, and for many of us on the panel today, one that will take, I think, a few years to continue as it evolves. We've been very fortunate that there's been increasing interest among health systems in making direct investments in companies, and our goal today is to share some of our experiences with you all and see if there are some tips and tricks that everyone here can learn from. Certainly during the preparation of this call, I took away a lot of great information from some of the other panelists that I hope to take home and try to perfect what we're doing at Mount Sinai. Before we get started, I'm curious, who here is an entrepreneur with a startup company that may be raising money in the next year or so? And is anyone here an investor? And is anyone here a portfolio company at Mount Sinai? There you go, James. All right, terrific. So we're really trying to orient the conversation around those who are entrepreneurs, but I definitely think there are takeaways as well for the folks in the room that are investors. A little bit about Mount Sinai. We're an 8-hospital system in New York City. We have about 42,000 patients, about 2,600 doctors. We see about 2.6 million patients a year. Mount Sinai Ventures started about 8 years ago with the goal of investing in care delivery, so urgent care, ambulatory surgery centers, and diversified about 4 years ago into digital health, medical devices, and other type things. We invest on average about $500,000. Our investment size has been as little as $50,000 and as much as $1.5 million. We have about 20 investments in our portfolio as of last week, which is really exciting. And our goal is to invest in companies that do business with our health system. You are looking at the entire Mount Sinai Ventures team. We run really lean. And so as a result, something that has been really important for Mount Sinai Ventures, me, is to try to find ways to partner with the other individuals within the health system in order to be able to create value for our portfolio companies, in order to be able to be thoughtful about what it is that we're investing in. And that's really what we're going to dive into today. I'm going to hand it over to Sarah from Boston Children's to give us a sense of, to introduce herself and give us a sense of what Boston Children's is doing.
Sure. Thank you. So I'm Sarah Lindenauer. I manage the accelerator program at Boston Children's. We are a group of 50 people. So 25 of us are technologists, software developers, product strategists, business analysts, and the like. So very deep on the team front and the resources front in that regard. We do not have a traditional investment arm, so we provide in-kind, very high-touch, customized sort of support and software development resources instead of true cash. So that's how we differentiate ourselves. I'm excited to be here today.
Thanks, Sarah. How about you, Ann?
Great, thank you. Hi, I'm Ann Wellington. I'm the Managing Director at the Cedars-Sinai Accelerator. We have an accelerator program through which we invest about $120,000 in participant companies. In the past, that has been in partnership with Techstars, the accelerator company that has about 40 accelerators around the world. Moving forward, we'll be bringing it all in-house, and so we're sort of going independent now. And previously, we have taken equity, but we won't be taking equity apart from what we get through our investment in the future. We also, Cedars-Sinai, in partnership with Memorial Care, also has an investment fund called Summation Health Ventures that typically focuses on Series A and B investments ranging in the $5 to $10 million range. Our team size is somewhere between 1 and 50, so we have about 3 or 4 full-time people working on the accelerator program. Summation, similarly light. We do involve everyone in the health system in the accelerator, so we've got a lot of sort of part-time folks engaged in that.
Congrats on the independence.
Thank you.
So I'm Rick Gordon. I'm a director at the Innova Personalized Health Accelerator, part of the Innova Strategic Investments. Just real quickly about Innova, the Innova Hospital System. We're in the Northern Virginia area, basically Fairfax, Loudoun County, Alexandria, and Arlington. Serve about 2 million patients a year, 300 docs, 400 nurses, give you a sense of the size of the health system. We have historically made a few strategic investments generally to drive innovation into the hospital system. Just recently formalized that with the Nova Strategic Investments really over the last 2 years. It's a $150 million balance sheet commitment. We expect to at least fully allocate that over about a 24-month period, so it'll give you a sense of the velocity at which we will be making investments. We invest in multiple ways. We are a fund of funds, so we are currently hold LP positions in 5 funds, may make one more before the end of the year. That's probably all we'll invest in other funds, at least from this first allocation. We make later stage investments. We won't lead those. If there's a strong venture lead, we'll invest as a co-investor from Series A through whatever the round might be. But generally, we're brought in sort of as a strategic label by whoever the lead venture firm might be. And then what I focus mostly on is our seed portfolio. We'll make direct seed investments, so traditional seed, anywhere, let's say, between $500,000 to $1 million investments on typically on notes, it caps, let's say, under $8 million in valuation with some exceptions. And then our accelerator program, as you would imagine, sort of fixed price, fixed equity. It's $75,000 invested for a 10% equity stake, an additional commitment to a $250,000 investment in the follow-on seed round. We are happy to lead that round. Obviously, if we lead it, the terms are likely to be more favorable to us. We're also happy to co-invest. So if the entrepreneur can find another investor to come in and lead that round, we're happy to co-invest alongside.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Rick. Eric, tell us what's going on in Northwell.
Eric Feinstein. I am the investment director, and I run our venture equity practice at Northwell Health. Northwell Health, little broadly, largest health system in New York State, 23 hospitals in the network, over 650 ambulatory and outpatient centers, long-term care, skilled nursing. Our portfolio on the investment side, we're about to close on our 16th investment, hopefully today, and that ranges from medical devices all the way through HIT and other services. We actually have a much larger portfolio than the $50 million of capital that we deploy into external businesses. We also do what we call corporate carve-outs, which take non-core assets in the system, put some seed capital behind that, and then usually partner with external capital providers to carve those out of our systems. We've done that with our revenue cycle management. I'll pause there.
Great. No, thank you, Eric. That's fantastic. I think one of the things that I sort of bring to everyone's attention is that we tried to structure this in such a way that you could see sort of the spectrum of investment types sort of going down the table left to right. Sinai Ventures, I didn't mention, we don't have a fund. We're just investing off of our balance sheet. So we would sit somewhere in the middle physically if we were to have done this appropriately. But then again, it requires showing up on time, and you know how I am about that. So one of the things that Eric touched upon that I'm curious to hear from the panel is this notion of doing corporate spin-outs. And I'm curious for everyone on the team here, on top of your team, is there someone that's doing tech transfer, commercialization of intellectual property within your health system? Sarah?
Yes, we do have a tech transfer office that handles sort of IP. We have a number of cases where there's internal IP. We stand up sort of a company around our internal innovator, whether a clinician or a researcher, and we'll work very closely with the tech transfer office in preparing for spin out, but we'll, as an accelerator, are very involved in sort of helping form a team, hiring the CEO, and doing all the necessary sort of go-to-market components and preparing for that spin-out. So we have a great relationship with our tech transfer office in that regard.
So I saw a head nodding kind of across the panel. It sounds like we all have a tech transfer office in some way, shape, or form, mirroring what you're doing at Boston Children's. And I'm curious, for your selection process, is having intellectual property co-developed at the hospital system a benefit to perhaps one of the entrepreneurs or startups in the room? Is it something they should be thinking about as a way to get their foot in the door?
It could be. For us, we sort of see the accelerator as a way to access external innovation. So we've always thought of the accelerator program and our tech transfer program as existing in parallel. And there's opportunity for crossover, but it's sort of not necessary for someone to have co-developed IP with us. we are looking to bring in a lot of external IP and sort of have access to that through the accelerator program.
Now, at Northwell, Eric, is that the same case, or do you find that there's any sort of advantage to co-developing intellectual property with one of the employees at Northwell?
Yeah,
Inventors is the word I was
Yeah,
looking for.
let me state in two ways. One, we have a tech transfer office. We do generate a ton of intellectual property internally within Northwell. But I'll tell you from an investment standpoint, those are really hard to do. So internal tech transfer is really difficult to do in large healthcare organizations. For every external investment that we make, meaning for most of you guys here, we always like to add intellectual property. And I've got a CEO that's sitting right here that's a portfolio company, so keep me honest. I would say in a lot of our cases, we are adding subject matter experts, and every transaction that we get into is early enough where we are bringing those SMEs in at the table to help on product development, to help on research, and it adds a significant amount of intellectual property to the company. For that, we typically have some economic upside as we develop new products, services, and capabilities for these companies. So to answer your question, Brent, I think it is a really important part of what we do, and I would tell you all that if you are not leveraging your strategic investors in that way, you're not maximizing the potential of your investment syndicate.
So, Eric, again, I think you touched on something that I'd like to highlight here for the group, and I'm curious to hear from Rick in terms of what the thoughts are over at Enova. When you are evaluating an external investment in external intellectual property, and you see that they have gained sort of some momentum within your health system, what is it that you're trying to do in order to convince that entrepreneur to take Enova's money and to partner with Enova rather than any of the rest of us at the table? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, they're going to have to choose a strategic investor. It's rare that they'll put together a syndicate of strategics, especially when it's early stage.
It's a really interesting question. I think generally, never been asked that question specifically, how we sort of position ourselves against other health systems, which I think is what you're asking. Generally, we're positioning against angel money, seed money. By the way, there's very little competition in early stage in the Mid-Atlantic anyway.
So let's tackle that part of the question then. In terms of how do you differentiate yourself from institutional investors and angel investors? What is the same way everybody else does? Why should they take Enova's money?
So particularly the seed stage, Enova is a seed fund that brings you coaching, some curriculum to help you sort of understand or imbue you with a vision for a business that will allow you to be successful and raise money longer term, a customer, which is probably the most difficult thing for an early stage company to get. And then of course capital. Capital comes at the end. And so that combination, that portfolio of benefits, it makes it kind of easy for us to not only compete against money, but actually be invited into rounds we probably shouldn't be getting in anyway. But from a health system perspective, how we would differentiate ourselves, I think, so compared to what you might see at other health systems, I mean, there are three of us at ISI, and we're all entrepreneurs. We've all been at companies at the inception stage. We've all been at companies at the exit stage. In some cases, very big ones. And so I think there's an incredible amount of empathy that we have, not only sort of knowledge of the sort of roadmap, but in my case, certainly knowledge of all the mistakes you could possibly ever make in building a startup to help our companies avoid them. So that's probably, how we would differentiate ourselves.
And anything that you would add, sort of looking at the partnership between Cedars-Sinai and the Techstars program, along with Summation Ventures, in terms of how you're trying to sit there and differentiate yourself from perhaps other accelerators that are out there nationally, as well as other sort of investment opportunities that these entrepreneurs might be able to seize?
Sure. I think one of the things we try very hard and successfully do is to pair the companies that we work with executive sponsors and executive mentors at Cedars. So if we have a company that's coming in with a nursing-focused product, we get approval from our chief nursing officer, and she's going to be working with them on a consistent basis to give feedback not only on the product, but help give that insight into how do we make purchase decisions about things, what's that process that happens kind of behind the scenes at a large academic medical center to make purchase decisions, which is something that's kind of an opaque process for a lot of our entrepreneurs, especially those who might be experienced entrepreneurs but aren't as experienced in working with enterprise healthcare systems. So really having that buy-in from the organization and not siloing it to just working with an innovation team or just working with a few individual clinicians, but really working with people at the high levels of the organization.
So I think for a lot of people in the room, they're looking for the folks sitting at this panel as sort of the gateway into our institution, and not necessarily for the financial investment or for the accelerator program, but frankly for the client relationship. Right. And they see this as sort of an additional benefit, but not necessarily the real target here. I'm curious for you all, and feel free to chime in, I won't call out anyone specifically, is that an accurate perception to have, and are you left with the responsibility for your institution of finding innovation, or are you trying to just shepherd these companies through whatever your program is, be from the investment side or from the accelerator side?
So I'll jump in if you guys don't mind. I have to, and that's our second bottom line. We're a double bottom line fund, although our number one objective is to get venture returns. The second bottom line is driving or accelerating the insertion of innovation into our health system. Inova has not historically been an innovative health system, and we are one of the things that they're doing to try to change that. And so if we can't get that technology inserted, and for us, what that means at early stage is either getting commitment to a trial, commitment to alpha or beta. If it's software, then I can't do the deal. And so that is part of my due diligence process. It is absolutely the most difficult thing that I do. By the way, if you can get that advocacy before you come to me, then it becomes a lot easier for me to do the deal. But for sure, that's absolutely something we have to do.
I'll say that healthcare is not innovative in the least bit, and I'll say that broadly. Mm-hmm. It's really difficult. And this industry has changed dramatically over the past 5, 10, even 20 years. We shepherd companies through the system in a very meaningful way, from procurement to clinical. But we also leverage our internal folks for due diligence. So we have to, our individuals, there's an educational process, and you guys should appreciate this. Being on the inside, the first reaction is always no, generally speaking. Whether it's procurement, whether it's clinical, any change to existing workflow, whether it's positive or negative, first reaction is generally no.
Second reaction too.
Yeah. So our job, and I would say, one of my jobs is really to help educate the organization. If you ask our CEO, what is our primary objective? We're catalysts of change management of our organization. We are there, and if we're not ruffling feathers of these different fiefdoms throughout the system, whether it's procurement, whether it's our chief quality officer, if we're not ruffling feathers, we're not really doing our job. So our job is really to help shepherd these companies through, but also leverage the assets of the system for due diligence to make good investments. So we underwrite strategic return and financial return. And every investment that we make has to have a venture class type of return. But it does have to enable the mission and strategy of our system in some way, shape, or form.
Our team, it's interesting, we have sort of a group that focuses much more on digital strategy for the enterprise, so implementing innovative health tech solutions for the organization. And then the accelerator is a separate program. We don't want to be limited just to pediatrics. We don't want to be limited just to solutions that the hospital will ultimately implement, because as Eric's saying, health systems are slow and not all that able to push the boundaries oftentimes on the enterprise level. So our accelerator operates independently in that regard. There are a number of success stories where we've been able to help develop, very early stage seed company through to later stage where they've gotten follow-on funding, et cetera, and then been able to actually roll them out on the hospital enterprise level. And in that process, of course, we work very closely with the other group on our team and hand that over for the actual implementation. But it's not a definite. Not all of our accelerator companies end up even piloting necessarily in the hospital. So we do keep it separate to some extent.
Yeah, similarly with us, as we evaluate companies, we want to make sure we see sort of a path to potentially using the solution in the future, but we use the accelerator program as part of the due diligence process to say, is this an organization that we do want to work with? And I would say over sort of the lifetime, we're on our 4th accelerator class right now, about half of the companies we've worked with have gone on to pilot at Cedars, and about 1/3 of them have gone on to commercial contracts. So similarly, it is, we get that upfront interest and then use the time we're working with them to figure out if it's the right fit.
Interesting. Now, see, at Sinai, I'm absolutely not the gateway into the institution. I'm only investing in things that I'm finding are already being used, have had some level of due diligence or evaluation by a subject matter expert within the institution, and that probably has something to do with our size. So if a company is coming to you all, what is it, let me restate the question, what is it that you all are looking for right now? What are you excited about from a theme standpoint? What kind of solutions are you getting pressure from your colleagues to try to find? Non-emergency medical transportation was a hot thing. I get a lot of calls from chatbot companies. You know, Anne, what are you at conferences like this looking for?
It's interesting. We're looking for, I think the thing that piques the most interest for me is not necessarily patient-facing or front-end clinician tools, but we always find it interesting to find things that are supporting the rest of the health system, so things in supply chain, things in billing, things in administration, HR, those sorts of tools. And there's a few different reasons behind that. One is, I think, if we look at our clinical end users, they have been inundated over the past 5 to 10 years with a lot of new technology tools, and there's a little bit of a saturation point that we start to reach with the ability to pilot new things. When we see a lot of those back-end tools, those are areas of the health system that certainly we've worked on finding innovation for, but that don't have that same saturation level. In terms of sort of specific areas, really anything that can help with cost savings. So we're looking for a hard ROI. And when we hear organizations come and talk about patient satisfaction and improving quality, those are great things. For our organization in particular, we have good patient satisfaction, we have high quality scores, and so really it's about how do we work on bringing costs down, and that's something we see reflected in a lot of other organizations as we talk with some of our colleagues about kind of where they want to see companies focusing is really on that hard ROI.
Anyone have any specific themes that today you're out there trying to solve for?
I will mention too, just in case anyone knows anyone, caregiver, geriatric support for caregivers, and sort of 4th trimester of care, postpartum apps, both of those I think are areas we're interested in.
I got 2.
Yes.
Rick, you're going to say something?
So, yeah, what I would say is that I think these aren't. By the way, just to put the sort of contextual chapeau on this, we're not. The health system really doesn't foist. Okay, this is very specifically the area we want you to invest in. I think themes that are important to our health system, cancer, anything related to our Cancer Institute, which is a major investment for our health system, cardiovascular, anything related to that. Women's health is also going to be an emerging theme for probably the next 5 years for us. So anything around women's health is important. I think from an investment perspective, less what's being driven by the system strategically, but in the category that you might be in, we're looking for capital efficiency. We're, what I would say is old school venture investors. We're looking for companies that can, where the denominator doesn't have to be a large number in order for me to get a good exit. Which, I think you would expect to see probably at a mid-Atlantic seed investor.
I will say what actually we're not looking at, because we'll look at everything else. Broadly in healthcare, services, HIT, and that ranges from HAIs, and Lewis is an example, and his company is an example of that. We've got a software investment into an AI and chatbot. We've got another application device for blood loss management. I mean, it's all over the map. And I wouldn't say we are particularly interested in one theme, although we do develop investment themes every year that we'd like to attack and go after. What we will not go after is highly capital-intensive businesses. So pharma, class 3 device, implantable devices. We will look at it. We do have expertise in that. We run about 4,000 clinical trials on an annual basis. So at a minimum, we'll try to pair those companies up. Whether we invest or not, we may pair them up with an SME and try and help them run clinical trials. But those are really the two areas that we really will not invest. But everything else is really fair game.
Sarah, I thought it was interesting you said that, thank you, Eric. Sarah, I thought it was interesting you said you don't necessarily look exclusively at pediatrics, which I'm
Yeah.
surprised to hear.
Yeah, that's true. In terms of the accelerator, we're looking for innovative digital health broadly. We don't look at medical devices or therapeutics, our group specifically, but can have application to adult populations, definitely not limited to just pediatrics.
All right, terrific. I wanted to ask this question earlier, and I got so excited I skipped ahead. How long does it take to go through your process? Be it the selection process for the accelerator or for the investment process? Mine is a lifetime.
That's a great question. We have a couple rounds for the accelerator. I will be honest. A couple rounds for the accelerator every year. The first step in the process is applying online. We have a pretty robust application for applying to the accelerator, and we have a committee that reviews them. From there, there's a phone screen. There's a invite for a pitch in person if that's deemed as a good next step. That would bring in necessary sort of clinical champions and folks from within the hospital to further vet from, is this an actual pain point? Is this something that we would potentially utilize in the hospital? It can take anywhere from a month to 6 months, probably, depending on where in the application round you submit the application. We'll move faster if you submit right before the round, because we operate on hard deadlines from the rounds ending, in that we bring together our advisory board, which has angel investors, venture, leadership from within the hospital, on set dates 2 times throughout the year. So we need to have made the decision and present those to our board by that time, which helps us stay in check and actually move things forward accordingly.
So 1 to 6 months, can you beat it?
I can't be 1 month. We have a pretty wide range. I'd say the absolute minimum for us is 3 months. If you applied on the last day that applications are open and we accepted you, that would be about a 3-month process. Realistically, most of the companies that participate in our accelerator program, we've been talking to for 9 months to a year. Especially, we require them all to be on site in Los Angeles for 3 months during the duration of the program. And we attract companies from all around the world. So for companies coming from Australia, the UK, we have a Polish company in our class this time. It takes some planning to figure out, how they're going to run a company from a different city for 3 months. The longest, we have a company in our class right now that has applied to every class. We're on our 4th one, so it's taken them 3 years to join the program. So that's our outside number there. Yeah.
So 1 month to 3 years.
It's 1 month to 3 years.
So I guess I should explain. So, our accelerator program is a curriculum. It's a 12-week curriculum. We run in the fall and the spring. It is open. We give that away. It is the top of our funnel. We don't require you to give us equity in order to become part of the program, and that seems to be serving us pretty well. The deal. And by the way, at the end of the 12-week period, you can come back for the next program. So we're really the objective would be not just to screen deals or not just to make investments in those. Let's say 10 to 20 companies a year. It's really to one, be the top of our funnel, and two, really educate a generation of entrepreneurs within our regional ecosystem to drive that ecosystem to support the hospital over the long term. So in some cases, forever. I mean, in some cases, there are companies that we train, that we get close to, that just aren't ever a good fit for us. In other cases, there are companies that we think are a great fit immediately. I've made an investment in as quick as 6 weeks.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, so about your investment cycle?
Yeah, so the investment cycle is always, especially for the $75,000 investment, one of the great things about making small investments is you can really take a lot of risk. My expectation will be if 15% make it to exit, and that's world-class, by the way. And so, that allows us to make a lot of bets. And so if we like the entrepreneur, we like the space, we think that's a capital efficient business, we're really inclined to do it. And then the long pole in that tent is, can I get advocacy from within the system? So, we hustle to, we take that business development role and go sell internally to see if we can get a commitment from whoever the clinician might be.
Now, Eric, at Northwell, you just have a checkbook, right? You
Yeah.
just write checks.
Yeah, no, I wish. I'd say our fastest that we've completed a transaction is about 4.5 months. Our longest is, probably about 12 months. So it can range from an investment standpoint. We have the internal innovation deals have persisted for years. That's why I say it's very challenging, but external investment, quickest is about 4.5 months. We target 60 to 90 days like any institutional investor. The reality is there's 8,000 challenges that pop up from all the different stakeholders to the investment committees that we have to go through and boxes that we do check.
So tell us about some of those challenges. I'm curious, where have you guys seen an entrepreneur come in, a startup idea be introduced, and have it just abjectly fail? What went wrong? Where did they go wrong?
I think there are a number of those.
It's like an Anna Karenina thing. There are many ways for companies to go wrong.
Yeah, let me ask the question. Do you mean from a company failing, kind of a company failure business model standpoint, or failing to get traction in?
Failing to get traction at Northwell. I can think of lots of reasons why companies
Yeah.
fail, but why did they fail at Northwell?
I think they fail at Northwell partly because they don't heed our warning. I think we know the system well. We know healthcare very well. We know investing very well. And in a lot of cases, I caution you guys, just as entrepreneurs, be persistent, but don't be so persistent that you will not accept no for an answer. If we tell you, no, now is not the right time for something, or it doesn't fit our target profile, politely push back 1-2 times, but I urge you never try to go over the top. It always ends up filtering back, and I can't tell you how many times things fail when we tell them no, it doesn't fit our profile, and entrepreneurs go over the top, send an email directly to our chief operating officer or CEO, and that email just comes right back down to us. It makes the entrepreneur look stupid, and in an attempt, I think, to undermine what we do, it just doesn't end up well. And it's probably the surest way, fastest way to kill your chances at 1, an investment, and 2, even a procurement contract.
I definitely resent entrepreneurs that go to somebody on my board or the C-suite. And it does tip the scale, which I feel like only slows down the process of saying no. It doesn't actually tip the scale in favor of the entrepreneur eventually. But it does undermine
Can I add to
that
that?
process.
So actually, I don't resent that at all. I think, I admire it. I invest in entrepreneurs that can sell, will, hustle, but I've never invested in one that went above me.
Yeah.
Right? So, it's good on you. I'm probably not going to get my money.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's helpful to know if someone has someone at the high level of the organization who's genuinely interested in their product and wants to serve as a champion for it, that's great, and I love an introduction from there. But just coming in from the top just because you happen to know that person or have a connection doesn't help. I see a lot of people, I think the Cedar CEO is like the most popular person in Los Angeles because everyone tells me he's a close personal friend of theirs and he's really interested in this. It always comes up, the truth comes out eventually of, is this person genuinely interested, or is this a way to sort of get in the door? And genuine interest is great. Getting in the door that way doesn't give an advantage over anyone else and can be really irritating.
Yeah.
I would echo everything that Ann just said. We wouldn't look down upon or resent a company that's gone to the CEO or C-suite. Our C-suite doesn't claim to know much about digital health, and so they'll oftentimes pass along companies that are entirely irrelevant. And so it might not, be the best funnel for us in terms of receiving companies to look at or the most effective, but doesn't mean we wouldn't look at them. Or there have been a couple cases where it's been a relevant company that's been passed on.
Yeah.
On the sort of success and failure, I think moving a little bit further down the timeline of what makes companies successful in working with the health system is once we've decided to engage in a pilot or to move forward, I think really accepting and working with the health system folks who are setting out timeline and setting out scope and things like that for a pilot or for a contract is something else that can be really beneficial. We see a lot of entrepreneurs who want to move really quickly and they want to expand rapidly and kind of can get ahead of themselves sometimes, especially early stage companies who maybe don't have experience supporting really large organizations, and they push to move really quickly, and that creates tension in the health system. It makes the product less likely to be successful, and can be a way to sort of fizzle out before we move on to the next phase of a contract.
Can I add one point to that? And I would ask you to ask Louis here his personal experience with the health system. Sorry, I'm putting him on the spot, but it's a great example of health systems move, and servicing a health system from a early stage point of view is really hard to do. We will push. It's hard to get in and open the door. We help open the door, but once the system buys, quote unquote, buys into the investment product, what have you, it's like going 1,000 miles an hour. It's like a bull in a china closet. And servicing, I'll speak for Northwell, servicing Northwell, which is a really difficult, integrated, large, complex health system, is very challenging. And Louis can attest to how difficult meeting demands from research to product development and the timelines, doing all of that with limited capital and individuals that don't understand. These are clinical people. They don't understand building entrepreneurial businesses. These are folks that say, I'm a user of a product, and this is what I want, get it through. So it's a blessing and a curse, because once you get in, you've got to be able to execute, and you're going to go 1,000 miles an hour to be able to do that. If you can execute, there's a lot of upside to doing so. But the easiest way, like Ann mentioned, is to try to go too hard, too fast, too early, which then I think fizzles out, and then conversely, going too slowly after everyone has bought in.
I'd like to build off something, Eric, that you just said that I've certainly witnessed at Mount Sinai, and that is that there is definitely this mentality of sort of death by pilot. And oftentimes entrepreneurs will come into the health system, they'll find a key clinical champion often. They'll be married to that clinical champion. That clinical champion has a great title because everybody at Mount Sinai is the chief of something. I'm the chief of venture. And as a result, the entrepreneur feels that this champion is going to be able to sit there and usher them through the entire process and has control of a budget, that they have their hands on purse strings. And the reality is they absolutely don't, and they don't even know anyone in procurement. And so what happens at times in my institution is that people get busy or distracted, or there's like a Zika outbreak, and the next thing you know, they're no longer paying attention to that entrepreneur and that startup company that they were piloting with. And as a result, that startup gets burned. That they've invested a lot of time, energy, and effort, a lot of their resources, maybe all of their attention into this one relationship, and they now all of a sudden have nothing. And so one of the things that I would recommend is think about how do you diversify your relationships across the organization. When you find that key clinical champion, how do you have that conversation with them to get them to start introducing you to the other key stakeholders? And then how do you do your homework in advance to make sure who you're working with actually is the appropriate person and indeed has the authority that goes along with that title?
Yeah, we don't do unpaid pilots, and we found that solves some of the death by pilot, and it's remarkable how, for all that people say they're really, really excited about a solution, they're excited, they won't pay $10,000 for a pilot. And that to us is a very clarifying moment of how excited are they. And we tell the organizations we work with, it does you no favors for us to do an unpaid pilot with you. That doesn't give you any validation that we would ever eventually pay for what you're selling. So no unpaid, and companies offer them all the time to a level that's surprising to me of we'll just do it for free, and it isn't a genuine validation of their product. So we ask that the stakeholder who would be paying for the full product pay for the pilot, and that eliminates a lot of unnecessary pilots.
Can you control your stakeholders?
We can't. I mean,
Neither.
it's a genuine purchase decision, and sometimes we have to like back channel and they say like, are we required to buy a pilot because this is an accelerator company? And we say, no, absolutely not. You know, our obligation to our accelerator companies is mentorship, guidance, feedbacks, networking, introductions. We don't guarantee them a pilot, so it's truly, would you pilot this product, whether or not it came through the accelerator? You have to make a decision, and it can be frustrating. Sometimes we want them to, and they won't, and that's that.
Yeah. We have this great digital health team in our IT department. They do this evaluation. They come up with rankings. They'll say, you know, of the 25 solutions, these are the 3 that we like. And then some urologist will walk in the door and be like, I'm using number 24. And you're like, well, why? Why are you using this? Who did you talk to? But we can't keep them from doing it.
Yeah.
It is unbelievably aggravating.
It is.
So as an entrepreneur, it's important to know that you might not be loved, even though you might have penetrated the system. So 2 other things I just want to touch on real quick from something Ann said a little bit earlier. One is around that knowing that the truth will eventually come out. I feel like once a week a company comes to me and says, oh yeah, we're doing business with so-and-so at Sinai. I call that person and they're like, we've never heard of this company. And I don't understand that. Don't do it. Second, disclose. If I find out that the guy who, or the physician or whomever is the key sponsor of your program has equity in your company and you didn't tell me, I'm not going to trust you anymore. And this happens more and more frequently at Mount Sinai. And the other problem is that what you might not realize is that you're creating a conflict of interest, which might preclude that key stakeholder from being able to actually endorse your product all the way through the implementation and contracts.
I mean, at least for
life cycle.
us, it's a clear conflict of interest. Now, it doesn't mean we can't make the investment, but you're right, it does complicate the investment for us, for sure.
So I want to pause here, make sure that we have enough time for folks in the audience to be able to ask some questions and see if they can stump our panelists in terms of what some of the interests are that you all have. Free for the stand up, just say where you're from and your question.
So where I'm from is a difficult one to answer. But
In terms of the company that you work for.
Robotics AI. So it's a.
See, it's right on the name tag.
Sorry?
It's right on the name tag.
It's right on the name tag. Yeah, exactly. So we're in revenue cycle management, and we're trying to detect overbilling and underbilling and medical claims. So that kind of solves the upcoding and downcoding problems with providers and payers. What I was interested in asking was, do you sort of, I know these accelerator programs have hard deadlines and sometimes you can miss them. Do you entertain data partnership proposals outside of your accelerator cohorts, or is it specifically via your accelerator and investment programs?
So the question is, do our organizations entertain data partnership programs if it doesn't fall in line with the life cycle of our accelerator programs or investment timelines?
I would say we're a bit unique in that we don't have a start date and an end date for our relationship with a company that enters our accelerator. Because we're so hands-on, because we very much view it as a partnership, we put resources against developing the go-to-market strategy and developing the software, whatever is needed, up to $250K. We're operating against, working towards that, meeting that $250K of resources allocated, but not like you enter in August and you leave in October. It's very much a fluid relationship. We will work with you sort of outside of a standard timeline from that perspective.
Do you guys do data sharing agreements with companies outside of the accelerator?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Does anyone here not do sort of data licensing agreements?
Not typically, no.
No.
There might be occasional rare exceptions, but it wouldn't be something we would. Especially we get approached by a lot of AI startups looking for training data, and I don't think we've turned them all down.
So good to see you. We do a lot of data licensing agreements. I think we do too many, and I think we're giving away the farm. But clearly, that's not my job. Rick, data licensing?
So theoretically, yes. As a practical matter, it's just difficult. It's really difficult to get it through our CIO, who I would put squarely in the laggard category. So it's difficult to make that happen.
Sorry, can I just say that it's one thing to kind of ask for data, but it's another thing to kind of partner with the health system and then be within the firewall, so you don't have to go through all the kind of approvals and review boards and stuff. Anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I'll say, we have well over 100 joint ventures in our health system, everything from central sterilization to dialysis, to just other, more investment-oriented joint ventures. We
You
do
have
a
a
lot of
clothing
it.
company.
What was that?
You have a clothing company.
We do. So it's all over the map, and we do a lot of joint ventures. I will tell you, though, with the caveat to that, is that we probably would not enter into a joint venture like that without a bigger investment thesis around it. So for RCM in particular, it would have to flow through one of our two RCM transactions.
You bring up a really interesting point, which is that a lot of us are sitting on data, but a lot of our data is really messy. And in order to actually put it into some sort of format that's usable requires a tremendous amount of work. Whether or not we're able to do that remains to be seen. Any other questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Zaid. I'm from Toronto. The company's First HX. I think everybody here, one of the main reasons to go with a health partner is the pilots and connections to hospitals. And I'm just wondering if you can speak a little more about the timeline in the process and how much of it, if trial is one of the main goals, how much of this is done before you join the accelerator, how much after, and so forth.
So we had a chance to address that question a little bit earlier in the panel. It sounded like the range was anywhere from a month to a lifetime. It sounded like, on average, though, it was sort of 3 to 9 months was sort of our cycle between all the folks in the panel here.
I will clarify,
Yeah.
the 3 months is just to get into the program, and then pilots, typically we start after the program, so from the time they've been accepted, at least 3 months up to about a year after that. So it's a long cycle.
So before the company joins the accelerator, do you speak to doctors to get their feedback? Okay, so you do know ahead of time if a pilot is likely to happen. And I apologize, I arrived late.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Srinath. I'm the founder of RiskCall. We help hospitals to improve nursing workflow, so happy nurses, efficient nurses can do better job at the bedside. So as part of these nursing workflow solutions, I'm trying to understand how much emphasis the accelerators or the hospital place on these mobile apps, which has to integrate with the EMR. Do they need to integrate with the EMR, or are the solutions which has nothing to do with the EMR, can they work with the hospitals directly in providing the mobile or wearable solution apps?
So just to restate the question for everyone on the panel and the audience who couldn't hear, how important is it that mobile applications are able to integrate with our enterprise electronic health record solutions? We're an Epic shop, so it's impossible. I'm curious, Boston Children's, real quick, what EHR is everyone on?
Epic and Cerner.
Epic and Cerner, you're in Allscripts down at the end there?
Allscripts,
Yeah, we actually have 11 EHRs still, but we're going towards Epic. So at Sinai, it depends on the day and who you ask. Our deputy CIO, if you're not in the Epic orchard, you just don't exist. But we have many, many applications that have gotten through, and it isn't necessarily essential. Frankly, from where I sit, I prefer there not to be Epic integrations. I feel like that we lose a year to 18 months just trying to go through that process.
I would say it's not as difficult to integrate with us because we have FHIR standards to make that integration possible, and a team that's been doing it since it existed. It actually originated at Boston Children's. So from that perspective, not impossible to integrate, but very important. If there's going to be repeat data that you're requiring any clinician to enter that could have otherwise been pulled in for the EMR, it's just an adoption barrier. It's much less likely to be used if it's not a seamless part of their workflow. So if it's possible, I would always recommend pursuing that.
Can I just add one point to running a pilot without full buy-in from the system is really hard. And from a technology standpoint, it's really difficult because it represents real costs on our end, actual integration costs. So to make it real for you, you would think, and I actually thought this too when I first joined the health system, we actually contract out to employees. I mean, just an integration to say our HIE costs a couple $100,000. So those are real costs that we are paying, whether it's an intelligent move on our OCIO part, it's a different question, but it represents real costs for our system. So just when we say, oh, I'm going to run a free pilot, or I'm going to help do this, there are real costs that we have to incur as a health system. So getting full buy-in before that point extends the overall time frame to doing a pilot, which obviously affects you as an entrepreneur and how you think about working capital and fundraising. It's a lengthy process from a technology standpoint.
So I'd say for us, it's difficult. As I think that most of you know, reading to the EMR is different than writing to the EMR, and so that obviously will impact, how difficult it is to get the pilot done. Full disclosure, I think we're sort of getting up the learning curve when it comes to that. I think we recognize in order to keep up from, a quality of care perspective, we have to be able to do this. We don't have the infrastructure in place yet to solve that problem, but have, in fact, did a really strong investment yesterday that makes that problem a lot more, or that solution a lot more achievable. So yeah, something we're looking at. I mean, really important to me as an investor, because I want to invest in digital health, and if I can't do those integrations, it prevents us from, sort of taking advantage of a high-growth market opportunity.
Thank you. And you came from the farthest. I want to give you the final word.
Oh, thank you. I was on EMR integration. It depends on the application. So we certainly have supply chain and asset tracking apps that are in our accelerator that don't integrate at all. Anything that our clinicians are using, we would want integrated. We have a vision of kind of a single pane of glass where they're logging into Epic, which is our source of truth, and from there they can access what they need. That might be as light as we put a button in Epic and use single sign-on to log them into something that doesn't really have a lot of further communication, but we don't want them logging in and out of a bunch of different systems. It just is a waste of time and is pretty much a guarantee that they won't log into your system if they have to do it separately. We do have a EIS information systems R&D team that works with all the companies in our program to figure out their integration approach, at least while they're working with us at Cedars, so we help them with that so that it doesn't take the year to 18 months.
So to quickly summarize some concluding thoughts here, one of the things that really jumps out at me is how our segment of the industry in terms of strategic investment from hospitals as well as our innovation and accelerator programs are becoming increasingly more sophisticated, and that this is something that's new, but certainly something that's growing. All of us are on a call, coincidentally on a monthly basis. There's about 20 of us on the call. I know Eric's team over the summer had an intern that evaluated, I think, about 40 hospitals have some sort of investment accelerator type program across the country, and it's growing. And it's growing to a degree because it's a vanity project, and there's a lot of ego involved in hospital systems, and everybody wants one. And it's growing because there's a real opportunity for us to capture value and diversify revenue in a way that we haven't been able to do historically. And with sort of the ever-changing landscape of healthcare payments, we need to find ways to go and do that. The other big takeaway I have from our conversation this morning is around working through the program rather than trying to work around the program, and that there's a lot of benefit here. Many of these teams, with the exception of mine, have deep benches and clearly have the resources necessary to be able to help your company get through these very complex, large, bureaucratic, and sometimes frustrating systems. And there's a lot to be said about partnering thoughtfully and really paying attention to who it is that's shepherding you through that program, ensuring that they're the appropriate partner and that they have the right access and buy-in. I cannot thank the folks at Life Science Nation enough for the opportunity for us to come and speak, and I am so humbled by the panelists here for joining us today. It's always an honor to be with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.